I've actually been trying out tip down for a while to see how much I like it. Some of my friends said, you know what, tip down is actually better because as you grab that and pull it out of your pocket, you don't really have to reposition your fingers to deploy the blade. Whereas with tip up, you pull that out, you do have to sort of reposition your hand in order to deploy. Hello my friends, it's the Late Boy Scout with my review of the Kershaw Blur, a medium to large EDC blade that can easily be pressed into some tactical roles as well. What an excellent design from Kershaw, and a really classic one as well. This is a knife that's been around with Kershaw for quite some time, designed by Ken Onion, and it doesn't look like it's going to leave anytime soon. This is one of those designs that they just keep putting out and putting out and putting out, creating new versions of it, more and more versions of it, with different steels, different colors, different handle materials, and so forth, because it's just that popular and just that well designed. You know, and you can do that when you hit on a knife design that's so much of a home run. You can just keep putting it out and putting it out and putting it out, and people will keep buying it. If you want, that's a good thing and a bad thing, and I said this before, if you want a special version of the Blur, you know, a really specific one, good luck finding it, because, like I said, they'll put out this version, and then they'll keep that out for a while, and then they'll discontinue it and put out something else. During the course of this review, I'll show you a few other versions of this knife, on loan to me from my friends at Blade HQ. Go ahead and check them out using the link down below. This one in particular, though, does belong to me. And I've actually got another one right here that has been my beater and my tester. So this is the one, the Blur, that I've actually been beating on, and I'll show you some footage of that. This knife has not exactly been through the ringer, but it's been used a fair bit, and I proved it on a number of pretty reasonable everyday carry type materials, things that you might encounter on an everyday basis with your everyday carry blade. We're talking about paper, talking about cardboard, talking about a little bit of paracord, talking about a little bit of wood even. Are you really going to carve some wood with your everyday carry knife? Sure, why not? You know, you're on a walk somewhere, you grab a branch, you start whittling away at it just for fun, why not? Anyway, whatever the case, I think your everyday carry knife should be able to handle some of those small chores, and it's good to know that the Kershaw Blur handled them just fine. No ergonomic issues, no real hot spots to complain about in doing that cutting work with this knife. And what I'm most excited to tell you about is what a great edge this knife held throughout that testing. It started off with a razor sharp blade that would in fact cut hair right off my arm, and after the testing, guess what? It was still shaving hair right off my arm. And that's quite a testament to the 14C28N steel that comes on this Kershaw Blur, at least on this version of it. I said before, there's lots of versions of the Kershaw Blur. Here's another one. This one in red aluminum with the TrackTech insert and that bright satin blade. Wow, isn't that nice looking? Really, you can get about any variety of this blade that you want. The fact that there are so many versions of it is a good thing and a bad thing. If you want a very specific version of the knife, good luck finding it, especially if they don't produce it anymore, because that's pretty much what they do. They'll produce a few different versions of it at one time, and then they'll discontinue those and move on to some other different versions of the Blur. They do that also with the Kershaw Leak, the Scallion, the Chive, and a number of other knives that are very popular bestsellers with Kershaw. Another very cool version of the Blur that's currently on the market is this one that comes in S30v Steel. If you're a big fan of S30v, and I like it, then this is one that you might want to pick up, especially if you're a big fan of the Blur. And I've become a huge fan of the Blur. Another very cool variety of the Blur right here is this rescue version of it. You see that it's got this rounded tip going on, making it possible for the rescuer to do some rescue cutting without injuring the person they're rescuing. Also, a nice little carbide window breaker right here on the butt of the handle, making it possible for you to break into a car to rescue a passenger. And it looks like the current version of the Rescue Blur is all black on the blade, all black on the handle, Different versions of that Rescue Blur are out there. You might find one with a red handle, or keep looking around or keep waiting for different models. You'll probably find other versions of the Rescue Blur as time goes on. Here's another one that's very cool right now. Carbon fiber inlay instead of TrackTech, and that is just doggone attractive. Really, really beautiful. Now this one has actually got a different steel from any of those. Not 14C28N, not S30v. What we have here is what they call CPM 154, I believe. And what I'm reading is that that is very, very close to 154 CM. Not exactly the same, but very close. Now, I like the way 154 CM behaves. I like it equally well as 14C28N. So if you ask me, I would probably just go with 14C28N. But they're both excellent steels, and if you really want the variety, well, you can get it. Let's talk about some of the features of this knife and some of the reasons I love it so much. Ergonomically, it's fantastic. Feels really nice in hand. And that's one of the things that Ken Onion is very good at doing, is giving us really ergonomic knives. Also, very organic looking knives. They've got a very organic shape to them, as you can tell. A nice little drop point, a nice recurve right here as well, and I found that that recurve is pretty nice for cutting. I find that materials will kind of lock into that recurve area, and then when you bear down, it just doesn't have anywhere to go except deeper into the material, you know, making that cut very, very effective and efficient. So I actually kind of like the recurve, on the mild recurve here on this Kershaw Blur. It is also hollow ground here, and I have not had a problem with that at all. You know, there are advantages and disadvantages to hollow ground and flat ground, but I'm perfectly happy with a nice hollow ground blade like this one. And it's just a very finished and clean and beautiful looking knife overall. The TrackTech inserts do their job pretty nicely. That job, of course, is to lock your fingers into that handle. And they do a nice job of it. TrackTech is basically a rubberized material that is basically just kind of molded in a way that it's going to be grippy. And it, like I said, does it very, very well. The aluminum handles, which are handles, by the way, not so much scales. There is a liner in there that you can see, but that liner is kind of embedded into the handle and a little bit towards the back there as well, through one of the, it looks like through one of those pillars. So that liner is plenty strong, but as I said, it's pretty much an aluminum handle, and that's a good thing because we've got, you know, a lighter weight than we would have otherwise. If that was a fully lined handle, and this was really just kind of a scale, then we just have a heavier knife. So I'm glad that we've got a nice lightweight knife with this Kershaw Blur. It's very easy to carry for an everyday carry kind of knife. The weight is right in there, just a little over 4 ounces if I'm not mistaken. Right where I like it to be, and it's very comfortable in pocket, really comfortable in hand, no complaints whatsoever. The jimping on the top is not real aggressive, but it's good enough. It locks my finger in there pretty well, my thumb. And then these thumb studs that we have here are actually, you can see that they are actually sloped backwards and terraced to give your thumb a nice purchase as you deploy that blade, and that works great. It is spring assisted, as you might have noticed just then. Very, very fast and very fun to play with. Really like that. You do get a nice lanyard hole on the Kershaw Blur. If you choose to run a lanyard through that, not a problem. Go for it. And the blade itself does not interfere with that lanyard, which is a problem on some knives, but it stays nice and clear of that lanyard hole, so you're not going to have to worry about any kind of a braiding happening. It is a full flow-through design with those pillars, meaning that there's no back strap here to sort of block and collect dust or anything like that, or lint. It means you can blow that out with canned air or whatever you got and get this knife clean again with no trouble. You can reposition the pocket clip from tip down to tip up. I've actually been trying out tip down for a while to see how much I like it. Some of my friends said, you know what, tip down is actually better because as you grab that and pull it out of your pocket, you don't really have to reposition your fingers to deploy the blade. Whereas with tip up, you pull that out, you do have to sort of reposition your hand in order to deploy. That makes sense. I don't know. I've been trying out tip down in that for that reason, and so far I've kind of liked it. Also, That's the way that I most like to carry my Kershaw Leak. So it could be that that's one of the reasons why I decided to try tip down primarily now. Let's take a moment now to show you how the Blur stacks up against a handful of other very popular folding knives. There's the Kershaw Blur. Let's have a look at, let's see, here's the Ken Onion CRKT Foresight. That's a big blade. Also designed by Ken Onion, as I said. The Blur and the Foresight, well, they definitely have some hallmarks. They have some aesthetic similarities, but that Foresight is considerably heavier and larger. Also aluminum handle, you know, very similar, kind of similar blade shape, but this one's a bit more exaggerated. Everything about this one is just kind of larger and more exaggerated. But some of you wanted to know how those two blades stack up against each other, and there they are compared. So let's set those down, and let's have a look at what else. Maybe the Rat Model 1 is a very popular knife. We'll see how that stacks up. It's pretty favorable. I think that the AUS 8 steel is not as good at all as the 14C28N. Now how about the Spyderco Paramilitary 2 in S30v, and see how that stacks up. S30v certainly is a superior steel to 14C28N, but not by a ton for most people, I think. As I said before, this steel did really well in the testing that I put it through, and I've got no complaints about it, even against S30v. Here's the Spyderco Tenacious, an 8CR13 MOV. Like a lot of people like to call it analogous to AUS 8A, and I'd say that's about true. It does dull faster than 14C28N. Here's the Benchmade Osborne 943. That's also an S30V. Very nice knife. And it actually stacks up pretty well as far as length is concerned. It's a lighter knife, it's a smaller knife, but you do get some of the same kind of reach with this knife. Now here's a new and interesting knife. This is the Maxpedition Ferox, or Ferox, something like that. A very new knife, a very interesting knife. I was kind of curious to see what Maxpedition was going to turn out with their knives. And so far I'm pretty pleased. I think it's pretty interesting. And it does stack up pretty well against the Blur, both in weight and size. Not in steel though, the Blur has got it beat for sure. But in cost, this is a much more affordable knife than the Blur. So the Kershaw Blur, regardless of the version you decide to pick up, I think this is a stout yet light and easy to carry knife that's going to serve you well for a long time, and I am extremely happy that Kershaw has decided to keep putting it out for as long as they have. And I hope they keep doing it for many, many years. And I can't wait to see what other versions they come out with. Well, there you go, guys. There's my review of the Kershaw Blur, an excellent knife. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you guys later.